Yoriichi was a calm and respectful individual who wore a solemn and reserved expression at all times, rarely showing outbreaks of emotion. Generally, Yoriichi had a matching low and serene disposition, evident when he killed demons without changing expression. Muzan was caught off guard by his immense skill because he appeared unassuming. Because of his gentle disposition and unchanging facial expression, most couldn't tell what he was feeling. The only person who could read his feelings without difficulty was his wife, Uta. He was also extremely humble, seeing himself as just another man and no one special despite his godly attributes. An example being the time he performed the sun breathing forms for Suyako at her request and almost seemed embarrassed afterwards. Yoriichi was also noted by his brother to always have had faith in the future and was confident that despite the immense power of the demon slayers after they started using breathing styles, a generation would emerge that would surpass their own. Despite being mostly nonchalant, he does experience strong emotions. He grieved the loss of Uta and their unborn child for 10 straight days and was driven to tears seeing the joy Sumire showed at the simple act of being lifted up. He also smiled warmly and expressed gratitude to Sumiyoshi after his friend told him that his life was not worthless and that he promised to preserve its sun-breathing forms through his descendants. Yoriichi is also very kind, shown when he was on the way to fetch a midwife in preparation for the birth of his child, only to stop and help an old man he met along the way reach his dying son. Yoriichi and his twin brother, Michikatsu, were born into the Tsugikuni clan within the middle of the Sengoku period, a time when twins were considered to be an extremely bad omen. Yoriichi in particular was born with an odd birthmark on his forehead, which caused his father to declare that he would kill him. However, their mother, Akino, flew into a rage and stopped him. It was eventually agreed upon that Yoriichi would be sent to a temple to become a monk when he turned 10 years old. Despite their father's belief that the mark was unlucky, it granted Yoriichi incredible physical prowess and the ability to see the bodies of living things in transparency. Yoriichi grew up very differently from Michikatsu, being given much poorer food and education than his brother and confined to a small 3-tatami room away from the rest of the house. He never spoke and was therefore thought to be deaf as a result. Akino subsequently made him Hanafuda charm earrings in the hopes the gods would bless him with the ability to speak. He was also frequently seen clutching his mother's side. Because of this, Michikatsu found him pitiful. Still, his brother often snuck behind their father's back to see Yoriichi, even giving him a handmade flute as a gift to comfort him. One day, when he was 7, Yoriichi smiled and spoke for the first time, declaring his intent to become a samurai like his brother after watching Michikatsu practice sword swings, startling him. However, Michikatsu was dismissive of the sentiment, as it was well known that Yoriichi would be sent to the temple when he was 10. Still, one of their father's men, tasked with training Michikatsu, decided to humor Yoriichi, showing him a simple stance. Unexpectedly, the young boy flew into action after assuming the stance, landing 4 blows against the man and shocking his brother, who despite his training had never landed one. However, Yoriichi couldn't stand the feeling of hitting someone and renounced his goal of becoming a samurai. Michikatsu often asked him about how he had managed to hit the man, and he described what was likely an early form of a breathing style. However, rather than talk about the sword and continue training, he happily told Michikatsu that he would rather play Ban Suguroko board games and fly kites with him instead. When their mother passed away from her illness, Yoriichi went to Michikatsu's room at night to tell his brother the news and bid farewell, planning to leave for the temple that night. He expressed gratitude towards his brother, stating that he would always keep him in mind, and fondly tucked away the flute that Michikatsu had made for him earlier. It was later revealed to Michikatsu through their mother's diary that Yoriichi had known everything about their mother's illness, how it weakened her left side, and how Yoriichi frequently attempted to support her and help her move around. It was also revealed that Yoriichi knew his father would make him his heir and send Michikatsu to the temple, so he ran away to spare his brother. Despite this kind act, Michikatsu developed an intense hatred and envy of Yoriichi for continuing to surpass him in everything and continually showing gratitude to gain seemingly nothing. Yoriichi ran from the house and didn't stop. After running for 1 day and 1 night straight into the mountains without any sign of exhaustion, Yoriichi met a girl around the same age as him named Uta, whose entire family had died. Yoriichi chose to live with her, and after 10 years, Uta and Yoriichi had married. Uta became pregnant later. Just before the expected arrival, Yoriichi left home to summon a midwife, promising his wife to be back before the sun set. On his way, Yoriichi had helped an old man and lost so much time that he decided to return home and summon a midwife the next day. However, by that time, the sun had already set, and when he finally returned home, he found that Uta and the unborn child were killed by a demon. The tragedy shocked Yoriichi so much that he held her corpse in his arms for 10 days straight and only buried them after a pursuing demon slayer encouraged him to do so. This led Yoriichi to pick up his blade again and train as a demon slayer. Aided by his demon slayer mark and innate talent for swordsmanship, Yoriichi proved to be an incredibly powerful demon slayer. Later, he reunites with Michikatsu after the latter's samurai encampment was slaughtered by a demon and he was left the only sole survivor. Yoriichi killed the creature effortlessly and apologized for the deaths of his brother's comrades. Aided by his breathing technique, later named sun breathing, and wanting to help others, Yoriichi tried to teach it to the other demon slayers. However, no one could match his form exactly. Undaunted, he modified the breathing techniques to suit their strengths, allowing them to gain a similar increase in power and abilities to help them hunt demons. The variations he created formed the first water, wind, flame, stone, and thunder breathing techniques, and the best of these demon slayers became known as the Hashira. Michikatsu himself tried and failed to learn sun breathing, instead creating his own style that he named moon breathing. Soon, Yoriichi encountered Muzan Kibutsuji, the progenitor demon and mortal enemy of the demon slayers, accompanied by Tamayo. Upon meeting him, Yoriichi felt his rampant malicious intent, likening it to boiling magma from a volcano ready to consume everything. It was then that he reasoned that he was born with the skills and talent to defeat Muzan once and for all. Muzan stated that he lost interest in swordsmen who employ breathing techniques, so he performed long sweeps of his arm to outright kill Yoriichi. However, Yoriichi dodges, but instantly realized that any one of those attacks would be fatal, so he felt fear for the first time. Seeing into the transparent world, Yoriichi discerned that Muzan had 7 hearts and 5 brains that change position within his body. Seeing his chance, he combined all of his forms into a single attack, cutting through them all and overpowering Muzan completely. Muzan was left in disbelief at his inability to regenerate while struggling to keep his head attached. Yoriichi asked him what he felt was the value of life, but didn't receive an answer. He turned to Tamayo, but was surprised to see her looking at her master's dismembered body with a hopeful gleam in her eyes. Then, moving to kill Muzan once and for all, Yoriichi instead heard the sound of teeth cracking as Muzan's body burst into hundreds of small pieces. Caught off guard, he was only able to destroy 1,500 of the 1,800 pieces, leaving the rest to escape for Muzan to regenerate again. In spite of Yoriichi's failure to kill him, Muzan never forgot the encounter and remained fearful of Yoriichi for the rest of his life. Tamayo was left on the verge of tears as she realized that Muzan had learned how to avoid death by decapitation, cursing the survival of the man that ruined her life. Upon realizing that the Kibutsuji curse failed due to Muzan being weakened so much, Tamayo was surprised. Yoriichi approached her, but didn't immediately attack. So, Tamayo decided to tell him everything that he needed to know about Muzan, as it was unlikely that he would ever meet him again. As thanks for her aid, he let her go free, telling her that he had faith in her will to end Muzan. Soon after, several demon slayers came to report to Yoriichi that his brother had betrayed the organization, becoming a demon and assassinating the Oyakata. Yoriichi took responsibility for Michikatsu's betrayal, his inability to kill Muzan, and letting Tamayo escape. The other demon slayers demanded he kill himself as penance, but the newly appointed Oyakata ordered he be spared and allowed him to leave in banishment. After his banishment, Yoriichi decided he had much on his mind and wanted someone to talk to. He could only picture his friends Sumiyoshi and Suyako, so he decided to visit them. He meets Sumiyoshi, sits down with him, and tells him his entire story, from his beginning to his banishment from the demon slayers. Reminded of his tragedies and speaking of his regret at letting Muzan live and of the countless deaths that would follow, Yoriichi grew despondent. Sumire arrives at that moment to ask for a hug. At Sumiyoshi's request, he lifts her up, making her laugh and squeal with joy, causing him to break down in tears and embrace her. Suyaku arrives shortly after to comfort him and treat Yoriichi to a meal and cheer him up. While with the Kamados, Yoriichi would be asked by Suyaku to perform the sun-breathing forms. He kindly did so, performing all the moves with such grace he was likened more to a spirit than a human. Sumiyoshi watched these demonstrations intently and kept them in his memories. On his last visit, despite being told that he was welcome at any time, Yoriichi gave Sumiyoshi his Hanafuda earrings. Sumiyoshi and Suyaku then realized that this was going to be the last time he would visit. Overcome with emotion, Sumiyoshi called out to Yoriichi as he walked away, telling him to stop saying that he was a man of no worth. He reminded him that he saved them, and promised to preserve the sun-breathing's forms through his descendants. Hearing this, Yoriichi turns and smiles brightly, thanking the Kamados and waving them farewell. Despite being banished from the core, Yoriichi would continue hunting demons independently. However, he still kept in touch with the Hashira that he befriended with the silent permission from the Oyakata. Meanwhile, the court itself fell into disarray. Muzan killed every other sunbreather, and no one could teach breathing styles as well as Yoriichi. Despite the apparently limited lifespan of 25 years suffered by those who bore the Demon Slayer mark, Yoriichi lived to his 80s but eventually went blind. On the last day of his life, he would personally confront Michikatsu, now known as Kokushibo and Muzan's strongest lieutenant, as upper rank 1. Devastated at what his brother had become, he cried, and Kokushibo could only show disgust that his younger brother was old but still alive, despite having the mark. In spite of his love for his brother, Yoriichi knew he had to kill him and prepared to strike. Kokushibo's disgust turned to fear upon seeing that Yoriichi was still the same capable and powerful warrior from before. Yoriichi told his brother when he was going to attack, and soon struck, slicing through his neck without Kokushibo even being able to draw his blade. Angry at being surpassed, Kokushibo waited for the next attack. Unfortunately, it never came. Yoriichi passed away right then from old age, untouched. Angered that his one chance at a fair battle was gone, and that the man who nearly killed Muzan and him was now dead and undefeated forever, Kokushibo would strike at his brother's corpse in scorn, only to realize that Yoriichi still carried the flute that he had gifted to him when they were both still children. Unable to completely sever his connection with Yoriichi, Kokushibo took the now split flute and carried it with him. Thanks for watching, everyone. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.